going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay? Parallel and perpendicular lines. Oh, shucks. I forgot to fix those. And we're going to talk about how their slopes relate to the fact that they're parallel and perpendicular. So I can relate slopes to parallel and perpendicular lines. Pretty simple concept today. So rule number one, parallel lines have the same slope. Parallel lines have the same slope. Parallel lines have the same slope. And then they have a little disclaimer in the book that talks about vertical lines, because vertical lines don't have a slope. Vertical lines are parallel. Okay? So the little disclaimer they give us is vertical lines are parallel. Okay? We're going to show you here in a minute why vertical lines don't have slopes. So if they don't have a slope, how could their slopes be equal? Right? They can't. They can't be equal if they don't have a slope. But we can, we have to recognize that vertical lines are parallel to each other. So the book will cover that little disclaimer. Remember the rule? Change in y's over the change in x's. So if we pick a couple points on line L1, okay, what's the coordinates of this point? -4, 3. What's the coordinates of this point? -4, 0. Okay? So, slope of line 1, that's what this labeling means. M1 means slope of line 1. So that's going to be 3 minus 0 over -4 minus -4. What's 3 minus 0? 3. What's -4 minus -4? Yeah, that really becomes plus a positive 4, which is 0. What's 3 divided 0? 3. Try it on your calculator. You get an error, don't you?
Yeah.
That's because you can't divide by 0, and so your calculator recognizes that. And so that means we have an undefined slope. So if we check out, so this is undefined. And so if we check out a couple points over here, this is 2, 4, this is 2, 0. So if we find the slope of that line, we say 4 minus 0 over 2 minus 2, which again is 4 over 0, meaning it's undefined. Okay? Undefined. Horizontal lines. Okay? If we pick a couple points, -3, 3, and 4, 3. So slope of line 1. Slope of line 1 is 3 minus 3 over 4 minus -3. Gives me 0 over 7, right? What's 0 divided 7? No. 0. 0 divided 7 is 0. How many times does 7 go into 0? 0 times. Okay? So we get 0. That's a different answer than this. A 0 slope is different than undefined slope. 0 slope means there's no rise, there's no run to it. It's all run, I mean. There's no rise to the line. Undefined slope means you've been divided by 0. You can't do that. Yeah.
On that you have 4 minus negative 3. It would just be 4 minus 3.
No. I went 3 minus 3.
Oh, okay, never mind.
4 minus negative 3. Okay? So now line 2, if I pick a couple points, we'll go 2, negative 2, and negative 2, negative 2. So on top we go negative 2 minus negative 2. On the bottom we go 2 minus negative 2, which is 0 over 4. And what's 0 divided 4? 0. So those horizontal lines have the same slope, don't they? They have a slope of 0. Okay, so lines that have the same slope are parallel. And we have the little disclaimer that says vertical lines are what? Parallel. Okay? Real quick question for you. Emily, without looking at your I can statement, what are we talking about today? Awesome. Nice job. How slope relates to parallel and perpendicular lines. So what have we learned so far, Paul?
That sometimes horizontal lines will be undefined, and
No.
vertical lines. No, I meant
Horizontal
vertical.
lines will never be
I
undefined.
meant vertical.
Vertical lines will always have an undefined slope.
And the horizontal ones, the one that goes left to right, will always have an answer.
They'll always have a 0 slope. Okay? Catherine, what else have we learned today? Have the same slope. Right? Good. So, what we're saying, today we're studying how slopes relate to parallel and perpendicular lines. So far, what have we learned? Parallel lines have the same slope. Okay? Parallel lines have the same slope. I'm getting tired of that notice. So, if I extend this out a little bit, if I have y equals 3x plus 7, y equals 3x plus 7, what's the slope of that line? 3. So what is the slope of every line that's parallel to that line going to be? 3. Yeah, if you want to write it over 1, that's fine. If you want to call this 3 over 1, that's true. And so every line parallel to this is going to have a slope of 3. And so I sometimes write it, a notation looks like this. I mean, parallel slopes are going to equal 3 also, or 3 over 1. Okay? So make sure you realize that. The whole point of today's lesson, there's 2 points to it. The first one is, if a line has a slope of 3, then every line parallel to that is going to have a slope of 3. Okay? Moving on. Let's find the slope of this line. So let's pick this point and this point. Those are easy. And this point and that point. So this is 0, 4. And this is negative 2, 0. This is 4, 1, and 6, 5. In your group, let's find the slope of that. And make sure, or let's find out if they are parallel or not. Okay? So find the slopes of those 2 lines and tell me if the lines are parallel. So we agree they're parallel because if I go this way, I'm going to get 4 minus 0 over 0 minus negative 2, which gives me 4 over 2, which is 2. If I go this way, 5 minus 1 over 6 minus 4 gives me 4 over 2, which is 2. Okay? Now, someone asked, can we go the other way? Could have I subtracted this way? Yes, I would have gotten a 0 minus 4 over negative 2 minus 0, which would give me negative 4 over negative 2, which is still a positive 2. Okay? I'm going a little fast on that, wrapping it up. If you have questions quietly, you don't want to voice them in front of the class, make sure you talk to me about it later. But anyway, in this case, the slopes aren't the same, so what's that mean about my lines? They're parallel. Okay? So now, find the equation of the line that is parallel to y equals 3x minus 4 and passes through the point 6, negative 1. Let's talk about this for a second before I turn you loose in your group. If I want to write an equation of a line, which form? Remember the 3 forms? Which form did I tell you is usually the easiest for writing an equation? Point slope. That's correct, point slope. So that's what I want you to try to use here. Point slope formula, your knowledge of slopes and this equation given to you, and write the equation of the line that passes through this point and is parallel to that line. Okay? I'm going to pause, try that in your group. Emily, please tell everybody again what the point slope formula is.
Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x.
Okay, can anybody tell me what I gave you as my form of the point slope formula, my method?
Ooh,
I put boxes, didn't I? Good, Paul.
it's y minus the box equals box times x minus box. Close.
Okay. Then why did I give that to you like that?
So you can just add stuff in.
Did anybody tell me why I gave you my method, Emily? Okay, so you know where the values they give you need to go. They need to go in these spots. This is the slope. This is the x-coordinate. This is the y-coordinate. Okay? What point does this have to pass through? 6, negative 1. So the y is negative 1, the x is 6, and what do we say the slope was? If it's parallel to this line, that means it has to have the same slope, which is 3. So 3 goes here. Now, did I tell you to write this in standard form? Did the directions say give your answer in standard form? No. So this is correct. You could stop here if you wanted to. Okay? Those who put it in slope-intercept form, then you subtracted 1 from both sides. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Okay? That's fine. That'd be slope-intercept form. If I wanted it in standard form, I'd have to subtract my 3x from both sides. And then what did I tell you about standard form? Just to appease the chemistry gods, what do you have to do? Make a positive, so we're going to multiply everything by negative 1, giving me a positive 3x, a minus y, and a positive 19. Okay. Also, would be the simplest form here because we reduced a couple signs, didn't we? These two negatives disappeared, and all happened here was that became minus instead of a plus. So there's 2 less symbols in that second one. Okay? But any one of these are appropriate answers because the directions didn't tell you which form to leave it in. Okay? Now in this form, I would prefer you rewrite it and make that a plus, but the fact of the matter is I wouldn't mark it wrong if you didn't. Okay? Now if it were a multiple choice question and they gave you 4 different equations, that none of them would have minus a negative there. None of them would leave it that way. Okay? We need to move along. Is anybody not finished with this? We'll come back to it if you're not. Rule number 2. What do you think we're talking about in rule number 2? Perpendicular. Anybody know what the rule is already?
You switch the slope to, like say if you had y equals 3x plus an m, you switch it to y equals 1/3 x minus 9.
Yeah, it's a little different than that, but oh, I forgot to animate this. There we go. Slopes of perpendicular lines have a product of -1. Slopes of perpendicular lines have a product of -1. Horizontal lines and horizontal lines are perpendicular to vertical lines. The rule, product of -1, doesn't apply to horizontal and vertical lines because one has a slope of 0 and one has an undefined slope, and then we can't multiply them together to get -1, yet they have to be perpendicular. So again, there's a little disclaimer thrown in there to say this rule doesn't work for everything because horizontal and vertical lines kind of mess up life sometimes. Okay? So slopes of perpendicular lines have a product of -1. Now, Jacob is really close in what he was saying to you. You might not have heard it, but he was saying that if my slope was 3, my other slope was, let me get a marker, sorry, 1/3. The problem with that is what is 3 times 1/3? Or 3/1 times 1/3 equal? 1. Equals 3/3, which is 1, right? And this says our product has to be -1. So we need a -1. And so if this is a +3, this has to be a -1/3. It's a +3, the other one has to be a -1/3. Okay? Now, if the slope is -2/3, right here, what is the slope of the perpendicular? I heard -3/2. Is that right? No. What should it be? +3/2. Okay. If I have a slope of 1/4, what's my perpendicular slope going to be? -4/1. So in other words, what are we doing? We're changing the sign and flipping it over, right? So we're switching the sign and flipping it over. So to find the slope of a perpendicular, flip the number and switch the sign.
Flippy switchy.
I had a student teacher one time referred to this as the flippy switchy thing. Okay? And it's a little corny, but it's a little catchy and it helps you remember things. That's good to have. So remember it as that little flippy switchy thing where you flip it over and switch the sign. Okay? Flip it over and switch the sign. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on then. Find the equation of the line perpendicular to 3x plus 2y equals 7 that passes through 3, 2. Now again, before I turn you loose on this, what's the first thing we have to use? Yeah, we probably have to use that. What? We want to write an equation, right? So what form are we going to use to write an equation? My method, yeah, which is of the what? point slope form. Okay? Now, what's the problem with the equation they gave us? It's in standard form. So the slope of this is not 3, is it? The slope is not 3. So you got a little work to do before you can find the slope of this equation. So, use the point slope formula. Find the slope of this, use this point, write the equation of the line that's perpendicular to this line. I'm going to pause while you work in it with your group. So one of our answers was this. Did we have a different answer? No different answers? We all got this answer? Okay, good. What'd you get?
Y equals 2 over 3x plus 4.
Did you write it this way? Or did you just say it that way?
Did you put the x next to it?
Okay, good. I was hoping that's what you meant. So 2/3 x, okay, plus 4. All right, let's check it out. First thing we need to do is take our equation 3x plus 2y equals 7, and we need to find the slope of that, right? And so we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. We're out of time here, so let's be quick. So we get 2y is equal to negative 3x plus 7. And then we're going to divide everything by 2. So y is equal to negative 3 halves x plus 3.5. Now, what's my slope of this line then? Negative 3 over 2. What's the slope of my perpendicular going to be then?
2/3.
A positive 2/3. So we have the right slope, but we have an error in the rest of this. So now we use this formula. Y minus box equals box times x minus box. And my slope goes here. And then my point goes there. You cannot just take this equation and change the slope. That will be perpendicular, but it won't pass through that point. Okay? So you can't just find the equation they give you and change the slope. You have to use this formula here to find where that actual equation is. Okay? All right. Now your homework in class tomorrow is this. In class. It's not homework. You don't have to take it home and do it.